Hello and welcome to Plato's Cave on WZZR. Coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. It is home to fresh ideas. Well, it's almost stale, but they're still good to talk about. And we got awesome conversations in the chat room today. We got, who do we have? Cannon Sanders, we got Comet, Mace 139, Arara is in there. Who else? Let me see.
Mac is in there.
I'm in there. That's I can tell you who's in there. That's right. And Futurist, Jim Jones. I think I've been quiet for a little while. Wonderful. Now, the station is not actually controlled by anyone other than the people that are running it. But it's not a government or a corporation or any such institution that controls the station. Therefore, it doesn't receive any support from any of those institutions and requires your support. All the listeners, that's what keeps the station going. That's what keeps the electrons moving through the copper. And if you can give money, that's awesome. Any kind of currency is good. Crypto, hey, we'll take it. However, you might not be able to. That's okay, I get it. It's all good. What you need to do is then tell your friends and family. Tell strangers, wear the t-shirt. Wear the t-shirt, right? Just do it. Just do it. Tattoo shiny side out on your forehead. No, it's no good if you want an office job. Maybe don't do that. Maybe not. Hey, you can if you want to. If you're like a musician or something, it's all good. So please do that. And today is the 15th of June, 2023. 2023. The year of our Lord, where's my flying car is what I want to know. My flying anti-gravity car, and I want a robot that makes me toast and coffee in the morning. Don't have that.
Do you want some toast?
Jetsons were lying to me, Dave. The Jetsons were lying to me. Now, you can catch the Cave on air online on your smart device. That's awesome. I guess we have smart devices. That's something. So grab it up to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. That's right. I actually use the digital band in my car, but it goes out when I go into a tunnel, whereas AM stays with me.
AM
stays with me. I listen to AM a lot.
ABC radio.
That's the kind of guy I am. That's right, that's the one. Now, hey, you know what? You can use the archives for free. Another reason to donate or tell your friends about it. Family, strangers. The milkman. Tell the milkman. The milkman has nothing to do, just delivering milk. They can listen to
they still exist.
Revolution. Yeah, that's right. But you can check out the archives for free. All the host shows are there. It's wonderful. Freelicious. Before we start broadcasting at you in anger, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which our angry broadcast goes into the world. Dave?
I'm broadcasting from Dark and Junk Country.
And I angrily broadcast from the country of the Dark people. And with that, we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. This is... Again, you have to ask yourself, why are you being told the things that you're being told? All right, that's the question here, right? Now, I admit, not admitting is probably the wrong word, but I'll concede that sometimes things just slip out. It happens. It happens. I think the internet slipped out, kinda, or the people, the parasites, because these people, or let's call them parasites. Let's call them what they are. These parasites, they're not all powerful. They're not omniscient. They're not omnipotent. They make mistakes, and I think the internet was one of those mistakes. I mean, we turned it around real quick because the internet is for porn now. That's what it's for. And man, look at this powerful tool that we have: the internet, television, radio. These amazing tools of communication. What do we do with it? Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but I think it was something that they didn't see. And I think the other things they don't see, obviously, because no one is perfect, right? They're pretty good, right? Get me wrong. They got the plans, and they got their hands, choking, around our throat. That's what they have, but, they're not infallible. So I think, the internet is probably something that got by them. And sometimes other things get by them as well. Today, Dave,
Yes.
Interestingly, I was listening in the morning. I was listening. It was hot off the press, I guess. And then throughout the day, as I was listening, that's when journalism still was journalism.
Via most carried.
That's right. Now, beginning of the pandemic, or sort of, some probably a year into, there was a very influential paper that was written by 5 scientists, and that paper stated unequivocally that it's highly improbable, to the bordering on impossible, that the virus escaped from a lab, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, that is. Right, and that really informed our approach and I guess our attitude toward that. It turns out now, that 2 things happened. One, the chief scientist at the time, who is no longer, but at the time he was China's chief scientist, looking at this whole COVID thing. He said it's possible that it escaped the lab. So that's what the chief Chinese, not the Chinese government, not the Chinese party. This is what that scientist said. Okay, and it seems now a week later, the people that have or that wrote the article or the scientific paper, some years ago, have now, or at least one of them has come and said, well, maybe we were too what did he say?
Brash.
Too quick. Too rash, too brash, too quick to make that call. Now he's not saying that yes, it escaped from a lab, but the paper pretty much said, nah, it didn't. But now that person is saying, yeah, well, maybe we shouldn't have been as
maybe there was something to it.
Maybe there was a bit of truth in it. Now, I find this interesting because whenever somebody flip flops, just asks, well, why are you flip flopping? Are you flip flopping for the right reasons? Meaning, has science now shown you the way? And I'm okay to leave that open.
Right? My wife escaped the country.
And there's still scientists, I'm sure, that actually follow the science and follow the evidence where it might lead them. So maybe that's the guy. That'd be great.
Wow, that's an optimistic view there, Mickey.
I know. But by the same token, then you should never ever make categorical statements such as this is impossible, because
that's right.
Ultimately, and I'm going to make this point again.
They bite you.
It annoys people. This point annoys everybody. If we are, 2 options that we have at the moment, and there are others as well, but let's say the universe is infinite, that we're in right now, infinite, or we're living, or we're living in a multiverse, because this universe could be infinite, but we could be living in a multiverse of infinite universes, right? If that is true, either of those propositions, or all 3 of those propositions, then everything is true somewhere. There's no such thing as fiction, no lies. Nobody can lie. You can never lie. It's impossible for you to lie, because whatever you're saying is true somewhere. Might not be true for you, but it's true somewhere.
Is that the politician's mantra?
All right, hey, dude. It's like what they say, right? How do you know when a politician's lying? His lips are moving. Yeah, but it's interesting to see that, though, Dave. Because they've left the door open a crack now, saying, well, maybe it did escape from it. We're not saying it did, and it's still unlikely, but, we can't say with certainty that it didn't.
Yeah, I saw this on China Uncensored 2 weeks ago, I think, when it broke. And I didn't bring it up. I was waiting for maybe some more media outlets to cover it. But, yeah, true. It's truth. It was said, and... I suppose now that person counts their days alive.
Maybe.
Because remember the guy that broke the story, the doctor that broke the story that there was a virus? He's no longer with us.
Yeah, well, it's a slippery floors, my friend, and open windows.
Open windows, yeah, watch out for those.
What? It is an interesting development.
So just remember the articles that came out from the Freedom of Information release of emails for Daszak and Fauci and all those people that were involved in the decision-making process about how to declare it, and either a lab leak or not. And there was a ton of emails off the back of the declaration of one of the scientists that said, I believe this was a lab leak. And then it was basically Fauci and his crew that were attempting to find a way to describe it that wasn't a lab leak, and get everybody on board as a polarizing event. And all of that came out, I forget his name now, Rand Paul, brought all those articles out in Congress in the US and in questioning these people. I mean, he was brutal in the way he attacked the truth, hunting for the truth, I should say.
Yeah.
Not attacking, because he didn't attack anyone. Right? But he was brutal in his dedication to finding the truth, and I think that should be on all of us as well. But of course, we were all punished socially for bringing that kind of information to light. But now it seems that they were complicit, and I only say allegedly, in a cover-up to hide that. Because remember when Fauci was questioned about gain of function by Rand Paul, and he goes, well, the rest of the planet's scientist says what you were doing was gain of function. No, it's not gain of function. So he wasn't allowed to perform gain of function. The money wasn't for gain of function. And so he stood firm on declaring it wasn't, despite the technical description of what he was doing from a medical perspective was gain of function. They just called it something else. And that was shocking that he would go to that length, because he also had stock in the company that was doing it, so he had a value and interest in making sure that they continued to have money going to. And you know what? They've actually refunded that same research again.
Really?
Yes.
What a shock.
Through the same channels. And where's Fauci gone now? I don't know. He's disappeared, right? So does it matter? I don't think it matters, but I really think that if they'd, like Mickey said, if they'd told us the exact origin, I think our defense against it would have been a different defense.
Yeah.
The difference between there's a teenager wandering around with a gun, and we have prison escapees with guns. So you might have people who are willing to trade their lives for freedom, or just someone randomly doing things, right? So that's completely different. Those two, a terrible analogy, I'm sure, but those two things are the way I see our approach to it. So if you were police and you had one, you just put the feelers out trying to find where they were. But if you'd have task force, you'd have helicopters in the air, right? You'd have an APB out for whatever you could discover. You'd cordon off streets, right? The whole thing would be completely different. So sadly, Mackie, we are now the net result of all of those lies and cover-ups.
Oh, yeah. Look, there's no doubt in my mind that is absolutely correct. But ultimately, though, right, it is up to us to discern where truth lies. It's up to us to deny, or not deny, but not accept the narrative, make up our own mind, as it were. And this is what we're here for, to help everybody as well. We just point you to certain things such as this, which clearly says that there's a blip now in the narrative. And a good point that you made, actually, Dave. I was going to say Phil. I don't know why. Hey, Phil. Such a good radio name, Phil. Where's Fauci? I'm tempted to bring out a book. Like, where's Wally? Where's Fauci? Where'd he go? What happened to Mr. Fauci? Mr. Fauci!
Hey, guess what? Guess what I just did? I went to the World Health Organization and I typed in origin of COVID-19. And it says no results.
What do you mean? Really? What?
Yeah. Totally.
Really?
That's absolutely what I just did.
Huh.
So, if they don't have anything anymore on it, and if they've deleted all their records, right? I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
The search came up zilch.
What about them apples?
So I find it difficult to counter their messaging if you can't find anything on it.
It's like when Homer Simpson sits there with Ken Brockman, and Ken Brockman was what you're saying is that, sack beating. Oh, look, I'm not going to say that my boys aren't using violence. Oh, touche.
Sack beatings are up 700%.
That's what happens. Oh, that's gold.
You see, because look, the reason why I decided to go to the World Health Organization for a statement was because we got a strike on our YouTube channel because, if you don't know, it was meant to be from 2021, January 17th, our news article where we read out a British medical journal article on Norway, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into it. And they said that, the YouTube algorithm determined that we had provided medical misinformation.
Yes.
And there was no medical misinformation there at all. And yeah, that's just the status. If you want to find that, go to Rumble and look up Shiny Side Out there. You'll find our banned videos.
You can't argue with it because there's just no one to argue with.
No, it's just an AI. Guilty. Yeah. But we didn't say anything guilty.
You are now the guilty. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
You are.
That's really bad for my social credit.
Yes, indeed.
Because it's in my name. I'll be on a no-fly list, and then suddenly there'll be a van parked outside my house.
Right? What do you want to fly for anyway, man? Seriously, what?
The suckers.
Suckers. What?
Spreading the viruses, that's what it does.
That's what happens. We're spreading all the viruses. But look, it is really very interesting to see all of these things developing over time now, right? But the thing is that you have to actually remember. You have to remember the story. And the best example I can give you where it's really, really important to remember it is just prior to the invasion of Afghanistan, right after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this press conference, or this interview, I should say, with I think it was this fairly senior person, either from the White House or the Pentagon, I can't remember. And the interviewer, much to their credit, asked, well, are these the same people that we support when they're fighting the Russians? I mean, aren't those the Mujahideen that we train and give money to and all that? It's beautiful. The response was, no, don't worry about that. That's no one needs to remember that.
That's right.
What?
Look at you with your memory.
Squeeze me. And I mean, what do you say to that? It's like, okay, so what? We just don't worry. What? I mean, really? We don't. We don't question what went before. No. Just look, like Homer Simpson says, everything looks bad if you remember it.
That's right.
No, nobody needs to remember anything. It's like, you gotta go, what? Excuse me, really? I'm blown away every time I think about it, right? And this is where we are. Remembering stuff does not help anyone with anything because the agenda is changing all the time. It's like in 1984. I can't remember the power blocks, but they were always at war with each other, right? This one was fighting that one, this one was that. And whenever they changed fighting with someone and became friends with someone else, it would be, I don't know, we've always been friends with them.
That's what? Right.
Always. No, we're always friends. Really? Yeah. Okay. And that's how it is now a little bit, right? I mean, again, with Saudi Arabia, there isn't a country in the world America has less in common with than Saudi Arabia. There really isn't. Not a single country. And yet, they're allies. Not just allies, but deep
bedfellows for oil.
Bedfellows, yeah. I know.
And he got
So you
tons
ask
of money,
yourself-
making tons of money.
making money, absolutely. I mean, and you ask yourself, well, how is any of that possible, right? Well, it's selective memory. The answer is it's selective memory. You don't have to worry about remembering stuff if
If you just forget everything.
if you forget about it, don't remember it. It's your fault if you remember things.
That's right.
It's a beautiful thing, and it is also unconscionable. I mean, history is not a good thing. Read history and look at how people interpret history and how they see history, what happens in history. The only thing we know about the Carthaginians, for example, comes from the Romans. The Romans completely destroyed Carthage, salted the earth. They salted the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing grows
In salt.
in that place.
No, that's right.
Okay, that ship has sailed, and yet all we know about the Carthaginians comes from the Romans. Do you think there might be bias in their reporting? Potentially, I'm not sure. You tell me. Right? It is, and this is how it is with everything. Okay, look, I'm not saying the Germans were doing wonderful things during World War II. I'm not saying that at all. That would be silly. But by the same token, the only history really that we're getting is from the people that won. Right? So you have to accept the narrative that they give you. That's what happens in the world. And is it all true? Nobody really talks about. Okay, let's say the Germans had won the war. I'm going to make my point this way. If the Germans had won the war, we would never hear about concentration camps or Jews or anything.
That's right.
It just wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But we would hear all about Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
All about it.
Yep.
Okay. Because that is a horrible crime. I mean, if the Germans had won the war, or the atrocities that were committed by the Russians against the Germans or something. Because that's what happened.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really interesting, and you have to really appreciate that as well. It's the truth. Right. It's a thing. And you can't really deny it because it's happening. There are peoples, and we're digging up their ruins all the time, that we know nothing about. We know nothing about them. They're completely gone from the historical record. Okay? But we find the ruins. They're there. So how is that possible? Now, these are not that old. Some of these ruins are very old. Like, okay, so Göbekli Tepe, that's pretty old. But other ruins, they're not that old. They're within a couple thousand years of us. We should have something. We have nothing.
That's right.
Zero. No, and in fact, it's funny. The Bible mentions a couple of peoples that were completely lost to history, and then we find their remnants in the Middle East. We find traces of their culture. But the only knowledge we had before that was transmitted through Bible stories. It's other stories like that. I like referring back to the Bible. I'm familiar with the book. So it's a really interesting situation we're in, where we can't trust anyone or anything. Just can't trust anyone. Is it sad? It's sad, Dave. I don't know. Is it sad? It's not great, but by the same token, I mean, it's what it is, right? You make your bed and you sleep in it. I'm not too worried about being sad or not sad. What I'm concerned with is the truth. Right? I really want to know what is what. Will I ever be able to find the truth for anything? I don't like my chances. I really don't like my chances, simply because it is a really tough ask. And where do you go? Let's say you do get access to the Vatican archives and the Smithsonian, and you make your way down into the tunnels under the pyramid, whatever, right? All those wonderful things. Let's say you do that. Okay. Well, I never learned, the hieroglyphics, so I have to learn those. Right? I have to brush up on my Latin. I never learned Greek. Any other dead or ancient languages I have to brush up on. So you need to bring experts with
Sanskrit.
You. All of that, my friend. 100%. You're right. So even if you had access, what would you do with it? Right? Now, there's no reason not to get access, and then you get the experts and they help you with all the stuff. That's all goodness. But it's not as simple as all that, right? It's a matter of being able to use the information that you find. Right? No, it is, right. So it's a funny old world. We actually have to bring something to the table in order to make heads or tails of what's going on in the world. And if we have really been educated away from that for the longest time now, we're no longer encouraged to get a classical education, as it were. We really haven't. It's yeah. Go on.
Oh, I sent you a story today, Mackie. I sent you a story about the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics.
Oh, I saw that. Yes.
For quantum experiments that prove, and I think the best quote from the story, which doesn't make very much sense to anybody unless you know what we're talking about, and it says, was awarded to jointly Elaine Aspect, John F. Clauser, and Anton Zellinger for experiments with entangled photons establishing the violation of Bell inequalities and pioneering quantum information science. Interestingly enough, in their results, and the waffle, tons of waffle in each one of their own statements towards their win, but I'm going to just say that they were able to prove that a quantum entangled particle has no color until it's observed. Now, Mackie, we mentioned this Sunday, I think, about color.
Yes, I think so.
Right. That's good, but that the observer, or let's call it consciousness, changes the outcome. Isn't that interesting?
Well, look, for the longest time now, we have known this to be a truth, or at least Dave and I have.
That's right.
And now science is sort of, because the thing is this is the problem, Dave, right? I have to wind back just for a little bit, everybody. So what happened? What happened is this. Back in the day, there was a battle between science and religion. And, it was a battle, believe it or not, where it became... Actually, yes, that's where it started, but it got really heated with Darwin, Charles. Now, he wasn't the first to postulate or to talk about evolution or
he made it popular.
Yeah, correct. And that's really the issue. So you had to take, and this is still the case today, by the way. This is still the case today. You had to take a very strong position on this, because if you didn't, then it'd be very hard to argue your point. Because if you weren't dogmatic about it, then if you said, well, it's possible, then you've already sort of admitted defeat.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's right.
So if you give an inch, you might as well just give up. So you can't do that. You have to be very dogmatic with your stance, and that's what happened. So the church, as well as science, became entrenched. And the scientific view was whatever it was, and the church was what it was. The problem, of course, is that the truth, as always, is probably lying somewhere in between. Right? Now, 200, 300 years ago, the Descartes, 300, we decided to separate the spiritual from the physical, in our scientific endeavors. And that rift grew to an impossible large rift that you could no longer bridge. You could no longer go across it. It just was impossible after Darwin. You could no longer go across that. And spirit and the physical world were forever separated in the minds of the fighting parties, if you will. They could no longer make heads or tail. But now, with quantum physics and all the other things that we're coming across now, where things just don't make sense anymore, and where we think, well, what is the smallest currency in the universe? Well, what is the final particle? What is underlying it all? And some people believe it's actually thought. Thought is the smallest form of but I don't even call it particle, but as something that's governing our existence. Thought. Now that makes no sense at all because you can't measure thought. You can measure brain activity, but we still don't know how mind and consciousness work, right? And now with evolution, we're running into problems because of missing links and because of punctuated equilibrium and because of the way, well, evolution seems to work. And I made this point before, a long time ago. But if you look at evolution, right, and says it's completely blind, it's like there's no guiding force at all. It is your body, your genes are just responding to outside pressures. That's really what we're saying with evolution, right? The survival of the fittest, not the tallest, not the smartest, not the shortest, not the fastest, but the fittest for whatever environment we find ourselves in. That's what evolution is, and adaptation. Now, if this is a blind process, then we should see a lot more failure in those mutations, because mutations, they say, are completely random. They're triggered by outside environmental factors, but they're random. And this is the key. Just like Christians, the key tenet is that you have to believe in Jesus.
Sure.
If you want to be an evolutionary scientist, you have to believe that these mutations are completely random.
You've got to damn well believe in it. That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the problem is this, of course, that we don't have. I mean, the fossil record is spotty at best, and as we've discussed, fossils don't form easily, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see any failures. Like we don't say this is. I know I'm overstating the point, but we don't see people that have tentacles instead of arms, or noses growing out of their backs, or whatever it is. Like we
That's
don't
right.
see this massive failure because a mutation should be random. A mutation could be anything, right? Could be anything. It's a random thing. So why is it? Why don't we have those failed mutations? Why don't we have these failed? There should be 100 to 1 in the fossil record. Those failures, not species that have gone extinct. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about individual mutations that led to a failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Individual mutations in individuals, but we don't see that. So why is that? And this is bringing me back to the point where we are now, right? This dogma has set in, Dave. They can't move from it.
That's right.
And
they're in chains. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't because it is now you're now entrenched. I watch Richard Dawkins quite a bit in his debates, and I've read his book. And friends of mine are dyed-in-the-wool Darwinists, which is cool. I dig it. I get it. There's certainty in dogmatism, but the problem is, of course, that it's wrong. You can't make that statement because if you look at us and you look at how we developed, and you look at the complexity of it, it's almost impossible to imagine, and maybe it's my lack of imagination that is at fault here, but it's almost impossible to imagine how all of these mutations, these random mutations, led to where we are today. Because the thing is this, and I made this point to a friend of mine, and it's not my point, I'm borrowing it. You take a watch, a mechanical watch. Take a mechanical watch, and just look at it and give it to anyone. Give it to the next person. Here, you say this watch just came into being. What? It just evolved out of metal and
I mean, it was a bracelet in its past.
It was a bracelet.
Now it's a watch.
No, it's an insane statement to make. Of course it is. But that's what we're saying here, right? And any living organism is infinitely more complex than a watch. But nobody would ever argue with you that the watch was made. Now, I'm not saying the watch is alive or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not stupid or crazy. But it is certainly something to consider. Nobody would make that argument. Now, is spirit, is mind part of the equation? The answer, in my mind, is yes. What form does this take? Is mind or spirit what we like to call a manifestation of God? I don't know. Is there more to our existence than we can possibly imagine? I think so. I definitely think so. But we have a really hard time admitting that, especially if you're a scientist. If you're a scientist, you can't. I mean, all these extra sensory phenomena like ESP telekinesis, even the crazy things like Bigfoot and all these things that are beyond our explanation. Skinwalker Ranch, of course, my favorite, where things just don't make sense at all. We can't really acknowledge them, right? Because it falls outside what we're comfortable with as scientists, as people. It is a really terrible trap we've created for ourselves. Because if you do say that you believe something, or you think, well, maybe there is more to this thing than we think. Maybe we're just a 3-dimensional projection or 4-dimensional projection of a higher dimensional being into this realm. I mean, they lock you up, right? They won't take you seriously anymore. Why is that? Because we have got two entrenched sides. We've got the spiritual, or the church side, if you want, right? And then you have got the scientific side, but they're both entrenched. There's few people that question status quo. There's few people that can actually jump over their own shadow and say, hang about a second here. Maybe we got it wrong. Maybe we need to expand our horizon. Maybe we need to take into consideration other things here. That's what I want to see, Dave. That kind of approach.
Yeah. So all I could think about the entire time is that the people who have basically strapped themselves into a mover's trolley as evolutionists failed to then be able to accept, just like lockstep science everywhere else, is that genetic improvements can be passed down from as successes, things that were successful before you've replicated. And you can do that. Like something that's been proven already, things that can save your life, or some traits that were very important can get passed down. And like I said in the prior show, that NASA has in the ISS plants that they wish to be able to grow in pure sunlight without an atmosphere, and they hope that the success gene passes down to offspring in order for them to become able to withstand the intense light from the sun, from direct sun, rather than having to use electricity. So you could just point a window and put them in front of the window and they wouldn't die.
Yeah.
Right? That's a current experiment right now. We know the memories can be passed down in chains of mice. 7 generations was the experiment, and it was successful. So it's really important, I think, and this is part of the Plato's Cave connection, is we're not being told. These are little tiny snippets here and a snippet there and a research paper there and here, and there's no overall message. There's nothing in a textbook that tells you this right now. But there are successful scientific experiments with outcomes repeatable that prove this. And this is back to the Nobel Prize for Physics. They were able to prove that with hidden variables, there was Bell inequalities that they were able to defeat. So they were able to predict an outcome and cause an outcome to be determined before the experiment started. And this is this whole thing, Mackie, with that David Grush last comment, like David Grush stuff saying that, as Coulthard said, asked him, well, what do you mean dimensions? And he said, well, they could occupy the same space we do right now. They may not be extraterrestrial. They may even live on a different form of the same Earth with all of its gravity. If you split in one dimension, you split this in our dimension, if you split this 8 ways, maybe that's why gravity is so weak as a force, because it's split 8 ways, right? But he said that there were beings that could kind of just step in and out of this reality. They live somewhere else, but they can just kind of appear. That's still beyond our understanding and we can't even contemplate it. I think we can, right? I think we can work out through science fiction that this is something that people can do, come in and out of phase or from another place, but we can't imagine what the other place is. Anyway, I had to put all that out there because I think we're racing in a I was going to say spaceship, in a race car down a track so fast now with all these information releases that I think we have to start asking these questions, right? And one of them for me is that all these UAP releases, it puts into question a bunch of topics. So I'll just read through them, Meki. I did share them with you earlier.
Yeah.
Human origin has to be questioned. Now, the only reason I say that is not just simply for what we can see around as ancient buildings where there was clearly a technology more than we've got even today, because they could build, megalithic structures with stones that had such a weight that you couldn't bring them up a sheer slope, right? It was impossible. Even the Romans had trouble dragging around an obelisk that cut in half. So the Jupiter Temple is one of those things. It's stones there that we just couldn't manhandle today, right? We can't machine handle them. So the pyramid construction, that also comes into question. Their alignment, their exact shapes that have been 4 sides. It's actually 8 sides on the square-based pyramid. The middles are dented in, gives it more strength. The religion, I know we're talking about this already, right? You've got to question religion. And no one's doing this. We're just fixated on the UAP itself and this David Grush and the information that it might be starting to stir the pot. What about the popsicle stick boat, Meki? Do you remember that story? With the orange orb that the boat rested on out of the water, and ships in the shipping lane turned and came to rescue them. But here's the big one. And because we kind of all goes together here. Evolution, sure, if you believe that kind of thing. What about the jumps? As Meki mentioned, my esteemed co-host mentioned punctuated equilibrium. It's one of my favorites. I love it because it comes in spurts, right? When we really need to make changes, to adapt, we can. We actually do. And one thing, though, that we're not capable of doing is changing the quantity of chromosomes, pairs, by the way, from 48 pairs in the early hominids to the current 46. That's really important. So, are we a result of like an intervention or manipulation? And I'd say yes, given all of the old texts, certainly those from the Sumerians.
Yes.
Now, if we're not questioning them today, maybe, Meki, maybe we're on the leading edge of what we do need to question as a civilization.
Yes.
I just threw this list together in about 2 minutes when I was messaging Meki earlier today, right? What other things can you think of that we'd need to question?
Honestly, everything. And the answer is everything. You have to question every last thing. Because there's nothing left. There's nothing left to leave untouched. There's everything that you now do, everything that we have looked at, everything that we've built our foundation on is the only thing we can say with certainty, and I think I said it before, is that we don't know anything. We really don't. We pretend.
Socrates.
Sorry?
Socrates.
Well, that's right. Yeah. He said it himself, right? I mean, I don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
He was considered one of the smartest guys around at that time. So there really is a massive gap in our knowledge because the world doesn't make sense. And I'll tell you how much the world doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to the tune of 98%.
That's
now,
right.
why do I say 98%? Yeah. Because we had to invent this thing called dark matter and dark energy. Now, bear in mind, we haven't found any evidence for this yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But without this, what do you call it? Variable. Let's call it a variable. Mm-hmm. Without this variable, our math doesn't work out. Our math doesn't make sense. Because gravity is too weak a force, and other forces don't work out, and there's a whole bunch of equations that need dark matter and dark energy to exist. I mean, what is pushing the universe to expand? We don't know. Why is gravity so weak? We don't know. Right? So we invented dark energy and dark matter because that makes sense. There's a physics book, and it listed the evidence for string theory. And there was an empty chapter. There's no evidence.
There is no evidence. That's right.
There isn't. It doesn't exist.
No.
So now think about that for a second. We have just said our world only makes sense if we populate 98% of the universe with fantasy.
That's right. With question marks.
At this point, now I'm not knocking people with that have really pushed us forward, and really done something and really did fantastic science. But you have to admit as well when you just don't know, right? And we don't know. We have no idea. I'd like it for it to be different, but it just isn't. And we can't admit that, of course, because we're so smart.
Oh yeah. Guess what?
Ever so smart.
We're ever so smart. And if you think that we invented microwaves and X-rays and gamma rays and all that stuff, we didn't. We discovered their existence.
Bingo.
Is what we did.
Bingo.
If you think we discovered, invented fiber optics and microchips, think again. If the crash recovery teams actually began reverse engineering UFOs or UAPs or what non-human intelligence craft, whatever they're calling them these days, then did we? It's maybe we didn't. Maybe we didn't invent anything since I don't know, 1947, right?
Well, I want to put it this way. Look at the way things were in the 40s. The things we had, the Turing machine, even the first computers that we had. And bear in mind, the first computer we had was mechanical. Then we went to vacuum tubes, which was a big step forward. Radio technology is built in vacuum. In fact, I still have a radio from my grandfather that has a vacuum tube inside as a tuner. Believe it or not. A great reception. And it's now, the radio has got to be 70, 80 years old. All wooden case, very nice. Anyway, my point is, there's a leap, and I don't want to, a quantum leap, as it were, of progress that is really hard to explain. Now, yes, it's all been patented, and this happened, and the other thing happened, and it can all be traced. But was it really that? How did we think? And I have to really research this now, because nobody ever does. But how did we think to use silicon for chips, for example?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, we always had switches, like they were. I mean, and these transistors.
Mm-hmm.
Now that can be fairly easily understood. But when did we ever figure out? Oh, you know what? We can use. We can just melt down sand. And we'll make microchips. What? And it is as though our civilization received a massive injection of something. And I honestly believe, not taking anything away from the Germans, but the Germans undertook a lot of expeditions into all parts of the world, and maybe they found something. But my point here is that they were so far ahead of everybody else during World War II, during the start of World War II, and then even during the war.
Mm-hmm.
They just overextended. But the Germans made a couple of tactical and strategic errors. Otherwise, we'd be speaking Japanese now.
That's so true, and China wouldn't be much at all right now because they would have been destroyed in another war. Mickey, I'm going to put this forward here, and microwaves were discovered by accident, and that was 1945. And guess what the company was 2 years later that created a commercial version? Raytheon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and do you know Raytheon?
Yeah, I know Raytheon.
Yeah, part of the
Business defense contractor.
military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
And did you know them and I think IBM and another company were all formed? They took their start from downed crash debris and reverse engineering it. They were parted out to different companies to find what they could do with these things they found. And that just is such a coincidence that I'm just going to put it out there.
Look, it is, yeah. Yes. What else can you say? I mean, there's certainly a case to be made, a very convincing case, right? Of course, we will be, tarred and feathered and called, crazy conspiracy theorists. Mm-hmm. Fair enough too. That's okay. I take it. But you gotta stop for a second and think about this as well, right? Where does the evidence lead you? What's going on here? How did all of this happen? Can we really trace it all? And how do you know that we didn't get the idea from somewhere else for some of these things? Right? There's this metamaterials, for example, memory metal.
Yeah, that's right.
This, right? I remember the show Beyond 2000. Towards 2000
mm-hmm.
back then, where they showed it, right? But it was also described in the Roswell crash.
That's right.
The Roswell crash described this memory metal. Which
mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is, okay, essentially, it will always go back to the shape it is meant to be in.
That's right.
And I remember in towards 2000 they had this car which had had a dent.
Mm-hmm.
I think they put water in it, but,
mm-hmm.
but I can't remember, right? It was something, and then it went back to the shape.
Yeah.
But it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're going, oh, how about them apples?
So I had some memory metal wire that you could bend and do whatever you want, and then all you did was pour hot water on it, and it just went back. It just went back to normal again.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just fantastic. That? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. Nobody thinks that's even slightly amazing. Well, I do. Maybe I'm just simple.
So I remember seeing actual footage of the rancher who had the I-beam thing hitting it with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is now. I've never been able to find it again. But I saw it was part of a TV show. But this was just a clip without the TV show wrapped around it. So I don't know where that came from. Probably the son or the grandson. Oh, 1 minute left, Mickey.
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. What?
Yes.
Where did that time go?
Oh, who knows?
Oh, that's good. Look, thank you so much for listening. Letting us into your lives, into your houses, maybe into your car. This has been Plato's Cave, and we hope you enjoyed our little chat. We're going to be back with the shiny side out on Sunday, then next week, Tuesday and Thursday, Plato's Cave again. Please stay tuned, because I'm sure something is going to come up. Not sure what, don't know, but somebody will be here, taking you through the morning, night, or evening, wherever you might be in the world. Until then, though, the most important thing, I'm trying to stretch it for the music, is to stay
I'm giving you the
safe.
stretch it sign that producer does.
Keep talking. Keep talking. What are you doing? And
There
there's
we
the
go.
music. Be safe, all. That's nice.